Maya walked through the crowded hallway of her small-town high school with her head lowered, hoping no one would notice her. But they always did. Whispers followed her like shadows, cruel words about her father being the janitor, about the smell of cleaning chemicals that sometimes clung to her clothes, about her second-hand shoes that squeaked on the polished floor. She never answered back. She had learned long ago that silence hurt less than trying to explain. Her father worked hard, sometimes all night, to keep the school shining for those same students who mocked them. Every evening, when the classrooms emptied and the laughter faded, Maya stayed behind. While her father mopped floors and emptied bins, she sat quietly at a desk, her small notebook open, copying strange numbers and equations from the chalkboard. To her, those white lines of math were not just symbols, they were puzzles, hidden messages waiting to be understood. The world of numbers made sense. People did not. She loved how equations always had answers, if you searched long enough, while people's hearts and words were full of confusion. Sometimes her father would peek into the classroom, a tired smile on his face, and whisper, "Almost done, kiddo." She would nod but keep writing, her pencil moving fast across the page. The janitor's cart rattled down the hallway, echoing softly, a reminder of who she was and what others thought she could never be. One night, when the moonlight spilled through the window and painted silver shapes on the floor, Maya stared at a complex formula her math teacher had written earlier that day. It was supposed to be an example for an upcoming test, but something about it pulled her in. Her eyes moved across each line, her mind racing. She didn't just solve it, she saw patterns forming behind it, like a code within the code. Her pulse quickened. She scribbled notes, filling half her notebook before realizing how late it had gotten. Her father called from down the hall. "Maya, time to go." She closed the notebook quickly, hiding it under her arm. She didn't want anyone to see it, not even him, because she wasn't sure how to explain what she was discovering. On the way home, she looked out the bus window, the night lights of the town blurring into gold streaks. Somewhere deep inside, she felt that her late-night habit of solving abandoned equations wasn't just a way to escape. It was leading her toward something big, something that might finally prove she was more than just the janitor's kid. But for now, she said nothing. She only pressed the notebook closer to her chest, unaware that the numbers inside it were the first steps toward a mystery that even scientists had feared to touch. Every night after school, when the halls grew quiet and the echo of footsteps faded, Maya opened her old notebook, its pages filled with symbols, formulas, and strange patterns that she didn't fully understand. The notebook was her secret world, her treasure, and her shield against the whispers that followed her during the day. She hid it carefully inside her father's cleaning cart, beneath rags and bottles, where no one would ever think to look. The thought of anyone discovering it made her heart race, not because she feared being laughed at, but because she couldn't explain what she had written. Sometimes, even she didn't know where the ideas came from. It was as if the numbers whispered to her, guiding her hand while she filled page after page with shapes and logic that felt both familiar and strange. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low and the classrooms emptied, Maya sat alone, her notebook open beside a half-ear-stitched chalkboard. She was copying a set of equations that her science teacher, Mr. Alvarez, had written earlier for a senior-level project. Her pencil moved quickly, her thoughts lost in the flow of the problem. She didn't notice when someone entered the room. Mr. Alvarez stood by the door, watching silently for a moment. He had always seen her around after hours, quiet and unnoticed, helping her father clean. But this time something caught his attention, the lines of numbers she was writing. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm but curious. "Do you know what you just wrote?" he asked gently. Maya froze, startled, her hand trembling slightly. She turned to see him standing there, his eyes wide with a mix of confusion and amazement. She shook her head slowly, clutching the pencil tighter. "I was just copying," she said quietly. Mr. Alvarez stepped closer, glancing at the board, and then at her notebook. What he saw didn't make sense. A complex pattern, something that looked like an attempt at quantum balance equations, far beyond anything taught at the school. "Where did you learn this?" he asked. Maya lowered her gaze. "Nowhere," she murmured. "It just makes sense when I look at it." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then a small, uncertain smile crossed his face. "You have quite a gift, Maya," he said softly. But before he could ask more, her father entered, pushing the cleaning cart, humming an old tune. Maya quickly slipped the notebook into its hiding place, pretending to pack her bag. Mr. Alvarez didn't press further, but as he watched her leave, the questions in his mind only grew. That night, Maya lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering why her teacher looked so shocked. She didn't know it yet, but the equations she scribbled for comfort might hold something far bigger, something powerful enough to change not only her life, but everything science thought it knew. Mr. Alvarez couldn't stop thinking about the strange equations he had seen in Maya's notebook. The next day, he decided to test her, though he did it quietly, without letting anyone else know. After school, when the hallways emptied and the sound of mops echoed faintly from the far end, he called Maya into his classroom. On the board, he had written a problem that even his top students in advanced classes couldn't solve, a complex series of formulas used in college-level physics. "Just for fun," he said with a smile, handing her a piece of chalk. Maya hesitated, her fingers trembling slightly, but curiosity took over. She studied the problem silently, her eyes scanning the board as though she were reading a familiar language. Then, without a word, she began to write. The chalk moved quickly, filling the board with neat symbols and arrows. Mr. Alvarez watched, speechless, as she worked through layers of calculations that would take most students hours. When she finished, she stepped back, unsure if she had done it right. Mr. Alvarez checked the work carefully. Every line was correct. He felt his heart race. The next day, he tried again, this time with an even harder problem, one he had borrowed from an old college textbook. Maya returned the following morning and handed him a sheet of paper. The answer was flawless. It happened again and again. Every challenge he gave her, she solved. It wasn't luck. It was something deeper. Mr. Alvarez knew what he was seeing, genius hidden under the dust of a janitor's cart. But when he brought it up at a teacher's meeting, excitement quickly turned into mockery. "You're joking, right?" said the head of the science department, laughing. "A janitor's kid solving advanced equations. Be serious, Alvarez." Another teacher smirked, adding, "Maybe she copied from the internet." Mr. Alvarez tried to explain, his voice firm. "She doesn't even have a computer at home. I watched her solve one right in front of me." But no one listened. They dismissed him with polite smiles and skeptical eyes. "Some kids are clever," they said. "Don't overthink it." He left the meeting frustrated, his hands clenched at his sides. As he walked through the dim hallway, he saw Maya waiting near her father's cleaning cart, a soft smile on her face, unaware of the laughter that had filled the room minutes earlier. "Did I do something wrong?" she asked quietly, noticing his expression. He shook his head and forced a smile. "No, Maya, you did something incredible." That night, while the world slept, Mr. Alvarez sat at his desk, staring at the stack of papers she had solved. He knew he had witnessed something extraordinary, something that the others couldn't yet see. And deep down, he promised himself that he would help her prove them all wrong, no matter what it took. One cold, quiet night, Maya sat alone in the school library, surrounded by stacks of dusty books and journals that no one had opened in years. The clock ticked softly, echoing through the empty room as her father cleaned the nearby hallway. She had stayed behind again, curious about something Mr. Alvarez had mentioned earlier that week, a lost equation that scientists once called unsolvable. Flipping through the yellowed pages of an old science journal, Her eyes stopped on a strange formula written in faded ink. It looked incomplete, as if someone had started something far too dangerous to finish. The notes around it mentioned a theory about atomic energy behaving in unpredictable cycles a mystery researchers had abandoned decades ago after calling it the infinity problem. The name alone sent a chill down her spine. She read the fragments again and again, unable to look away. The equation seemed alive, shifting in her mind, almost begging her to understand it. She began to copy it into her notebook, her pencil scratching across the page as the rain started to fall outside. Each line she wrote pulled her deeper into a puzzle that felt older than anything she had ever studied. As she worked, she noticed small patterns, repeating numbers that looked random at first but began to form a rhythm, like the steady beat of a heart. The logic behind it didn't make sense, yet somehow it did. Her fingers moved faster, connecting symbols and drawing shapes that weren't in the original notes. Hours passed without her realizing. The air in the library felt heavier, charged, as though the room itself was holding its breath. Somewhere deep inside, Maya sensed that she was crossing into something no student, and perhaps no scientist, was meant to touch. When she finally leaned back, exhausted, her notebook was filled with equations that connected energy, sound, and time in a way that defied logic. She whispered to herself, "What are you?" The page didn't answer, but she couldn't shake the feeling that she had uncovered something the world had tried to forget. Just then, the door creaked open, and her father peeked in, smiling softly. "Still reading, kiddo?" he asked. Maya quickly closed the journal and nodded. She didn't want to explain what she had found, not yet. As they walked home through the drizzle, she held her notebook close, her thoughts spinning faster than the storm around her. That night, long after her father had gone to sleep, she sat by the window and stared at the equations again. They seemed to shimmer faintly in the dim light, as if daring her to continue. She had no idea that the mysterious pattern she had found, the infinity problem, had once terrified even the brightest scientists. And now, in a small town where no one expected greatness from a janitor's daughter, Maya was about to walk straight into the heart of it. It didn't take long for the whispers to start again. Word had spread around the school that Maya, the janitor's daughter, was working on some strange, impossible equation that even scientists couldn't solve. At first it was just curious talk, but soon it turned cruel. Students laughed behind her back, calling her the math ghost and the crazy cleaner's kid. They teased her in the hallways, saying she was pretending to be a genius to get attention. Maya tried to ignore them, but every cruel word left a mark. Even some teachers looked at her with disbelief, whispering that she was wasting her time. One morning, she was called into the principal's office. The room smelled of polished wood and old coffee. The principal, a man who always spoke kindly but never truly listened, folded his hands and gave her a practiced smile. "Maya," he said, "I've been hearing things. Students are saying you're obsessed with some scientific theory. Maybe it's time you focus on real subjects, things that will help you in life." Maya wanted to explain that it wasn't just a theory, that she had found something special, but the words caught in her throat. She simply nodded, even though inside, her heart ached. When she left the office, a group of students snickered near the lockers, whispering about her mad equations. She walked past them without looking up, gripping her books tighter, her knuckles pale. That evening, as the sun disappeared behind the small row of houses, Maya helped her father mop the school hallways. He noticed her silence and frowned. "Rough day?" he asked gently. She shrugged, staring at the reflection of the lights on the clean floor. "They all think I'm crazy," she said softly, "even the teachers." Her father leaned on the mop handle and smiled, that tired, kind smile she knew so well. "People clean in different ways, Maya," he said. "I clean floors. You clean doubts. Don't let their dirt stick to you." His words sank deep into her heart. That night, she opened her notebook again, staring at the strange symbols that had once felt like a mystery. Now, they felt like a promise. The laughter at school still hurt, but her father's words gave her strength. If everyone else saw only what was impossible, maybe that was exactly why she needed to keep going. She began working again, her pencil moving faster than before, driven by quiet determination. Outside, the wind rattled the windows, but inside, the only sound was the steady scratch of graphite on paper. Each symbol she wrote seemed to glow brighter in her mind. The world could laugh all it wanted, she would prove them wrong. And somewhere deep down, Maya felt that the equation no one believed in might just be the one thing that could change everything. For weeks, Maya barely slept. Every night after finishing her chores and homework, she sat by her small wooden desk, surrounded by open notebooks, pencils, and the dim glow of a single lamp. The pages were filled with strange symbols, lines, and numbers that only she seemed to understand. The mysterious equation, the infinity problem, had taken over her mind. It haunted her dreams, appearing like flashes of light and sound that vanished when she woke. Each night she worked longer, her hands smudged with graphite, her eyes burning from exhaustion. Her father worried, but when he saw the quiet fire in her eyes, he didn't stop her. "Just don't forget to rest sometimes," he would whisper. But Maya couldn't stop. Something inside her was pulling her toward a truth that felt just out of reach. Then came the storm. Rain lashed against the window, thunder rumbling like a warning. The power flickered, but the lamp on her desk stayed on, casting a warm circle of light over her notes. She flipped through her pages again, her pencil moving faster than ever. Every calculation she had done before seemed incomplete, like pieces of a puzzle waiting for the final image to appear. Her mind raced as she tried connecting one idea to another: sound, frequency, atomic spin, vibration. Suddenly, it clicked. The numbers aligned in a way that sent a chill through her. The equation wasn't just about energy, it was about the rhythm of atoms themselves. How they moved not in silence, but in tiny vibrations that could be measured like notes of a song. Atomic spin and sound waves, two worlds no one had ever linked, were part of the same pattern. Her heart pounded as she wrote the final line, her hand shaking. She didn't believe it at first. She checked it again and again, redoing every step. The answer held steady. It was real. The sound of thunder outside seemed to fade as she stared at the page in disbelief. She had solved it, the mystery that had terrified scientists for decades. Tears filled her eyes, falling onto the page and blurring the ink, but she didn't care. She pressed her hand over the notebook, whispering, "I did it." The wind howled, and lightning lit the room, but Maya barely noticed. The discovery wasn't just numbers anymore, it was a doorway to something the world had never seen. She sat there for a long time, listening to the storm, her chest rising and falling with quiet sobs of relief and wonder. For the first time, she felt the universe wasn't far away or unreachable. It was singing to her, hidden inside every atom, every sound. And though no one knew it yet, the janitor's daughter had just uncovered what the greatest minds in science had once called impossible. When Maya showed her discovery to Mr. Alvarez, his hands trembled as he turned the pages of her notebook. He read each formula carefully, his eyes widening with every line. The calculations were beyond anything he had ever seen, yet they made sense, perfect, balanced, and astonishing. "Maya," he whispered, looking up, "do you understand what this means?" She shook her head shyly, unsure if she had done something right or terribly wrong. Mr. Alvarez smiled, though disbelief still flickered in his expression. "You may have solved something the world has been trying to understand for decades." The next few days became a blur. After school, they met in the science lab, staying long after everyone else had gone home. Mr. Alvarez helped her organize her data, rewrite her notes neatly, and explain her theory step by step. They worked carefully, double-checking every line. Maya was nervous, She was just a student, the janitor's daughter. Who would believe her? But Mr. Alvarez believed. He helped her prepare a formal report, and together, they sent it to one of the country's top research institutes. When Maya sealed the envelope, her hands shook. She whispered a silent hope before dropping it into the mailbox, not knowing that moment would soon change everything. Days passed, then weeks. There was no reply. Each morning she walked to school hoping for a letter. Each evening she returned home with quiet disappointment. Her father comforted her, saying softly, "Great things take time, kiddo." She tried to smile, but doubt began to creep in. Maybe they had laughed at her work and thrown it away. Maybe she really was just a foolish janitor's kid trying to dream too high. Then, one ordinary morning, everything changed. The schoolyard was buzzing with noise when a black car rolled through the gate, sleek, polished, and nothing like the usual visitors. Students turned their heads as two men in formal suits stepped out, holding folders and carrying an air of quiet authority. They walked straight toward the principal's office, their shoes clicking against the floor. Moments later, a voice came over the intercom. "Would Miss Maya please report to the office?" The hallway fell silent. Whispers spread quickly. Why are they asking for her? What did she do? Maya's heart pounded as she walked past the same students who used to mock her. When she reached the office, the men stood waiting, their expressions serious but kind. "Are you Miss Maya?" one asked. She nodded nervously. "We're from the National Research Institute," the other said. "We received your work. We'd like to speak with you about your discovery." Behind her, the students who once called her crazy stared through the doorway, their mouths open in disbelief. In that moment, Maya felt a strange calm. The laughter, the whispers, the shame, all of it faded. For the first time, the world wasn't looking down on her. It was looking up. Maya stood at the front of a bright, silent conference room, her hands trembling as she faced a long table filled with scientists, professors, and researchers, people she had only ever read about in books. The walls were lined with screens showing her formulas and graphs, glowing softly in the dim light. Mr. Alvarez stood beside her for support, giving her a reassuring nod, but even his calm presence couldn't stop her heart from pounding. She could feel every pair of eyes on her, some curious, others doubtful. One of the senior scientists cleared his throat and said, "Miss Maya, we have all reviewed your paper. Your approach is unusual. Can you explain how a high school student managed to connect atomic spin and sound waves?" His tone was polite but skeptical, and Maya could feel the weight of judgment in the room. Taking a deep breath, she stepped closer to the screen and began to explain, her voice soft but steady. She walked them through each equation, showing how energy, when viewed as a vibration rather than a fixed state, followed a hidden pattern, a rhythm that linked sound and atoms together. At first, no one reacted. A few exchanged quiet looks, clearly unconvinced, but Maya didn't stop. She pressed a few keys on the computer, running a simulation based on her formulas. Numbers began to appear on the screen, spinning atoms, vibrating waves, and as the data processed, the real-time experimental results began to appear beside her predictions. One by one, the numbers matched perfectly. The room went completely still. The scientists leaned forward, eyes wide, watching the data unfold. The impossible was happening right in front of them. Maya's equations weren't just guesses. They were correct. The discovery that had baffled experts for decades was now being proven by a girl who once swept classrooms after hours. A murmur ran through the crowd. "It's accurate," one scientist whispered. Another tapped his tablet, shaking his head in disbelief. How did she even see this connection? Maya's knees felt weak, but she stayed standing. Mr. Alvarez smiled proudly, whispering, "They believe you now." When the simulation ended, the lead researcher stood slowly and said, "Miss Maya, your findings will change how we study atomic energy forever. This is..." Extraordinary. Maya looked down at her hands, unable to speak. She wasn't used to praise, she was used to laughter. Now, those same feelings of shame and doubt were replaced with something powerful: pride. The scientists began to applaud softly, then louder, until the room filled with the sound of recognition. Maya blinked back tears. The girl who once hid her notebook in a janitor's cart was standing before the brightest minds in the country, and they were clapping for her. Outside, the world didn't yet know what had happened, but inside that quiet conference room, history had just been rewritten by the janitor's daughter. Within days of her presentation, Maya's name began to spread like wildfire. What had started as whispers in one conference room turned into headlines across newspapers, science journals, and online articles. High school girl solves the infinity problem, one read. Janitor's daughter discovers hidden link in atomic energy, said another. Reporters crowded outside her small school, trying to get a glimpse of the girl who had done what even experts once thought impossible. News anchors called her discovery a door to new energy possibilities, suggesting that her equations could one day change how the world produced power. Scientists from around the globe sent emails and letters, praising her brilliance and asking to collaborate. For many, she had become a symbol of hope, proof that genius could come from anywhere, even from a girl who used to clean classrooms after hours. But while the world celebrated, Maya stayed quiet. She didn't crave fame. Every time someone mentioned her name on TV, she thought of the long nights she had spent in silence, the sound of rain on the window, and her father sweeping the floors nearby. Those moments, not the attention, were what mattered. When a journalist once asked her how it felt to go from being a janitor's daughter to a scientific prodigy, Maya simply smiled and said, "My father never wore a white coat, but he taught me something no textbook ever could. Dignity isn't found in titles. It's found in effort." Her words went viral, touching people's hearts more than her discovery itself. Many called her humble, others called her wise beyond her years. But Maya didn't let the praise change her. She still helped her father after school, still carried her worn notebook wherever she went. Fame, to her, was just noise. The real reward was knowing she had proven that brilliance could exist in the most unexpected places. Yet beneath her calm smile, she sometimes felt a quiet unease. The scientific world had accepted her, but she couldn't forget the faces of those who once mocked her. Now they looked at her with awe, instead of laughter, but their eyes still carried the same question. How could someone like her have done this? She didn't have an answer. All she knew was that the equation had chosen her somehow, drawn her in, and she had followed it to the end. One evening, as she and her father walked home under the soft glow of streetlights, he looked at her proudly and said, "You've changed how people see us, Maya." She smiled, looking up at the stars. "No, Papa," she replied. "You already did that. I just proved what you taught me." The world would continue to talk about her discovery for years. But for Maya, the most important truth remained simple. Greatness could rise from anywhere, even from the hands that cleaned the floors of a dream. Years passed, and Maya's name became more than a memory. It became a lesson written in textbooks and spoken in classrooms around the world. Schools now taught Maya's equation, not just as a scientific breakthrough, but as a story of courage, resilience, and belief in oneself. The same halls where she once walked with quiet steps now carried her portrait on the wall, the janitor's daughter, who changed how the world saw intelligence. Teachers spoke of her discovery, but they also told of her kindness, her patience, and her unshaken spirit. Even those who had once mocked her felt a quiet sting of regret whenever her story was mentioned. Some of them had grown up to become teachers or parents themselves, and they now told their children, "Don't ever underestimate someone because of where they come from. Believe in them, or you might miss the next Maya." Her journey became a symbol of hope for students who felt invisible. Those who came from simple homes, or were told their dreams were too big. Years later, A new janitor began working at that same school, a quiet man who often brought his young daughter along in the evenings. She would sit in the corner of the classroom while he cleaned, her small hands flipping through dusty old books. One day she found a worn notebook left behind on a shelf. Inside were faint scribbles of equations. The ink faded, but the symbols still alive. On the cover, someone had written 2 words, "Keep believing." The girl's eyes widened as she read the name on the first page, Maya. She didn't know the full story yet, but she felt something spark inside her, a quiet courage whispering that maybe she, too, could do something great one day. Outside the window, the same old bell tower stood, echoing the same sound that once marked Maya's late nights of study. History had come full circle, and the spirit of her determination lived on in new hearts. Scientists still built upon Maya's work, using her theories to create cleaner energy and better technology. But it was her lesson of faith and persistence that left the deepest mark. In every school assembly, teachers told her story, not as a tale of genius, but as proof that dreams didn't belong only to the privileged. They belonged to anyone willing to keep trying. And sometimes, when the world felt too big or unfair, students whispered her words to themselves. Dignity isn't found in titles, it's found in effort. That sentence, once spoken by a young girl who was laughed at for dreaming too high, now inspired generations to rise beyond doubt. And in the soft light of that same old school, the janitor's daughter's legacy lived on, not in fame or wealth, but in the beliefs she left behind, that even from the quietest corners, brilliance can shine bright enough to change the world.